to visit with yet. While you're doing that, I'm going to bring up our Sergeant of Arms. Let's hear a big round of applause for Judy McHenry. Okay, you have to excuse me because I found out that I was going to be Sergeant of Arms 10 minutes ago. So, it's all about Eagles today. And what we ask is that our members put $1 in the bucket. Guests are exempt, and this money goes into our scholarship fund to fund all of our college and VOTEC scholarships. So today it's all about Eagles. So the question is, what is the highest rank in Boy Scouts?
Eagle Scout.
Okay, who's an Eagle Scout? Raise your hand. Stand up, all you Eagle Scouts. Come on, let's see you. Let's see you. How many? All right. Great. Okay, next question. Who is the Philadelphia Eagles head coach?
Who cares?
That's the best answer. Who cares? Well, his name is Nick Sirianni, if you want to know. Okay, we have fantasy football coming up for Rotary. So if you guys want to join, go see Tom Riggs, okay? The commish. He'll get you signed up for fantasy football. Who is the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback? Hurt. That's right, Jalen Hurt. Who is from where? Where'd he go to school? Okay, good job. Okay, next question. Eagles, the band. When were they formed? 1971. Did somebody say that? Okay. All right. Who was one of the original Eagles that might be from Oklahoma? Vince Gill? Anybody say it? Vince Gill. Vince Gill was one of the original Eagles. Yeah. Hey, you guys, that is what ChatGPT said, and I'm believing it. That's all I have today.
Thank you, Judy. Again, get out those dollars. That supports our scholarship fund, so be generous. Next up, excited to introduce our Rotarian of the day, who I've talked into coming up here and saying a few words, so please welcome Michelle Propp to the stage. Michelle has been an awesome Rotarian. We are so excited to celebrate you today, and thank you for all you do for our club.
Okay, so I'm going to try and do this without crying. For the last year and a half, I've had the hardest year and a half of my life. And so many of you guys reached out and checked on me, and I just wanted to say thank you. I'm coming back now, hopefully full force, and I can get back into my service, for service for the community. But I just want to say thank you. That's it.
And that is what Rotary is all about, so thank you for sharing. Many thanks to our caterer today, Monty McMazzio's with the Pizza and Pasta Bay. Thank you so much, Monty. We are lucky to have some guests with us today. I won't make you stand, but if you'll give us a big hand wave when I call out your name. We have Karen Dennett here with Cy Elmberg. Karen, welcome to Rotary. Give us a big wave so we can see you. There we go. We also have Bill LaRue here with his lovely wife, Karen. Oh, he just stepped out. I saw him earlier. He's just being shy. He doesn't want to be called out. All right. We also have our new member, Leslie Sexton, here. I know we'll be inducting her soon. Leslie, thank you for being here. We're so excited to welcome you to Rotary. We have Ruben Peterson with Charlie Wallace. Welcome, Ruben. Thank you for being here. And is Rod Cry here today? You know, I introduced him last year as a new member, or he's transferring from another club. I had no idea that he has many years of service at Rotary in Kansas. He was the president of his club and a district governor. So, all of you committee heads, bring this guy in on your committee. We're excited to welcome him to Rotary. All right, if you have an announcement
said, sure. And what did he do? He did it for like a month and a half. So it continued through Fairy Festival all the way up to recently. And today he gave a check to Lindenwood Gardens, which I'm going to present to Pauline, for $254.70. Thank you so very much for everything you do for the community. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up.
I know I'm not as freaky as Mary or anything, so I apologize. But for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, I want to make sure you get up there and say the Delaware County Community Partnership with the Potts Family Foundation gave us another $1,500 donation to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. So if you see any of them, please be sure to thank them. And their support is obviously paramount for us. Also, I was sitting here looking at the calendar, starting to say that I was going to have a meeting on the 19th, and I realized I won't be here, so I need to figure out a different schedule for that. But we will have one, I promise.
And we'll give you a break this time, but I mean, I expect the pink cowboy hat, the shirt, I mean, right? We want to see the full. Mary's going to train you up right.
You know, just hang on, let's see what
We might
happens.
pay good money for it. We might pay good money for
There
it.
you go. There you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to announce the new Barkeritaville this year. It is going to be out at Patricia Island. It is going to be a Hawaiian theme. The Patricia Island staff is going to cook all the food. We will all be under tents. You will be able to get tables, but on your table, you can either take a picture of or take this, is a QR code and the steps you go through, to get a ticket or to be able to shop online. So, and in the next couple weeks, we'll be having some people in the back that can go through and help you buy your tickets. I hope you can make it. I think it's going to be great. Thank you so much.
All right, well, with that, I'm excited to introduce our program. I think we're going to, well, I know we're going to have a program, and I think it'll go long, and I think you guys will have a lot of questions, so we're glad to get this going. But our program today is Dan, am I saying this right? Reinking? Is that right? Reinking? Oh, I got it right. All right. Dan is the interim director at Sutton Avian Research Center. He has a BS in Wildlife and Fishery Sciences from South Dakota State University. Dan began bird watching at age 12 when his uncle took him bird watching for the very first time. He now has more than 36 years of experience as a biologist and has focused on long-term monitoring of bird populations of hundreds of different species. Information which helps detect declines before a species becomes endangered. He has authored or edited 2 books about Oklahoma birds and is working on a 3rd. He's also authored hundreds of articles about birds for newspapers and magazines. He has worked at the Sutton Center for 34 of their 42 years, so I think he knows a thing or two about birds and the Sutton Center. So please help me welcome Dan to the stage.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting us here today. Talk a little bit about bald eagles and the work that the Sutton Center has done with eagles over the years. And the Sutton Avian Research Center is located just a few miles outside of Bartlesville, and I know a number of you used to live in Bartlesville, so you're probably familiar with it. This is a photo of our headquarters building that was donated by the Harold Price family of the Price Tower in downtown Bartlesville, one of our famous landmarks in town. The scope of our work has been not only in Oklahoma, but has touched many other states, as you can see highlighted on the map here. Different projects we've been involved with over the years in different parts of the country. Today we're kind of talking about bald eagles and tying that into a celebration of America's 250th anniversary this year. And Sutton Center has a long history of projects around bald eagles, and I'm going to talk about some of those today. Bald eagles are significant in North American history and culture. They're significant species to many Native Americans. considered by some to be spiritual messengers or symbols of peace or fertility. The bald eagle was also prominently featured in the Great Seal of the United States that was adopted in 1782. And the phrase "E pluribus unum," out of many one, being the slogan on the Great Seal. And that slogan also happens to have 13 letters, just one of the many symbologies present in the Great Seal. This seal is used on U.S. passports and is found on the back of the $1 bill. It's also used to authenticate some official government documents. There's a lot of symbology here. The eagle is clutching an olive branch in one talon, symbolizing a wish for peace, and arrows in the other talon, symbolizing a readiness for war, but looking toward the peace side. And there are 13 stars, 13 stripes, 13 leaves, 13 olives, and 13 arrows in this seal, symbolizing the original 13 states. Bald eagles continue to be very popular with Americans. Here's a recent set of stamps that was just issued this year that shows bald eagles of various different ages, from nestling to adulthood. Sutton Center has been involved in many projects, but among those have been recovery of endangered species over the years. Beginning with the bald eagle, our first major project upon our establishment in 1984 was to work on recovering nesting bald eagles here in Oklahoma and several other states. In 1963, bald eagles in the lower 48 reached their lowest population with only about 417 pairs remaining. And since that time, a very slow recovery began taking place, and the Sutton Center had an idea to jumpstart that recovery when we formed in the 1980s. One of the main reasons for that decline was the use of the pesticide DDT, which entered the food chain and inhibited calcium deposition on the eggshells, resulting in thin-shelled eggs. And when the female would incubate those eggs, the eggs would crack. And therefore, there were years and years and years of essentially zero reproduction in eagle populations. And that's one of the major things that led to that decline. We began our eagle restoration project in 1985 and continued that for 7 years. Our idea was to go to Florida, where those remaining nesting birds were present. We could remove eggs from wild nests in Florida, which would cause those pairs to lay a replacement clutch, so we weren't having a significant impact on Florida's population. We could take that first clutch of eggs back to Oklahoma, hatch the eggs, raise the chicks, release the chicks in areas where we wanted bald eagles to become reestablished as a nested species. And as you can see here, we raised and released 275 eagles over 5 southeastern states during those 7 years. So here are a few images. We hired professional tree climbers to go up to the nests in Florida and get the eggs. They were put in special containers and lowered to the ground. Here's the climber rappelling back down from a nest. We would then transport the eggs in incubators back to our facilities near Bartlesville. We used some bantam hens to incubate the eggs initially during the first week or so of incubation, and then transferred them to artificial incubators, as pictured here. And here's an eaglet hatching. We used a variety of techniques to prevent the eagles from becoming imprinted on people. So here is an eagle head puppet that was used to feed the chicks, so they would not associate people with food. Whenever we had to weigh or handle the birds, we put on what we call ghost costumes, just basically a large camouflage sheet to disguise the human form, because again, we did not want these to be tame eagles and landing on people's decks for handouts and things like that after release. Eagles are notorious for killing each other as siblings in the nest sometimes, so we had to keep them separated for a period of time. Each eaglet got its own individual tub. And once they got a little older, the risk of that happening is past, and we were able to put the so-called This is what we call a hack tower, and this is the method that was used to release these eagles in areas where we thought would be good nesting habitat for them. And eagles don't mature until they're about 4 or 5 years old. And so this is a very long-term, hopeful project, because we had to release these eagles and then hope that 4 or 5 years later they would come back to this same area and nest where we let them go. That was the idea behind our project. And when the eagles are put into these hack towers, they're initially pinned in there, but they can see through the bars, and they spend a period of time getting acclimated to these new surroundings. And then one day we come along and remove the bars, and they're free to come and go. We continue to provide some food in these towers for a period of time as the young eagles are learning to hunt for themselves. But over a period of a month or two, they essentially leave the tower and they go out on their own. We mark these young eagles in several different ways. Some of them had plastic leg bands with numbers on them. They had federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service bands on them. They're a more permanent type of marker. We put transmitters on some of the birds. You can see the antenna poking up from the bird's back here. And we use some hair dye to bleach specific areas of plumage on different birds so that they could be recognized easily from a distance. We also received reports whenever one of our marked birds would be found dead at a later date, we would get a report about that. And this is just a graph showing the ages at which our birds have been recovered over the years. And of course, the largest number of birds were age 1 or less, because that first year of life is the most difficult time for eagles to survive. If they can get through their first year, then they're much more likely to live a long life after that. The oldest bird that was recovered from our releases was a 24-year-old bird, from 24 years later. This graph shows the recovery of nesting eagle population here in Oklahoma. The red arrow is the initial goal, which was to get 10 pairs of eagles established nesting in Oklahoma as a result of our work. And that goal was reached within just a few years after our releases started. The number of eagles has been continuing to increase ever since then, and we now have well over 300 nesting pairs of eagles in Oklahoma, including a number of them right around here in this area. And nationally, this increase has been occurring as well. Throughout the country, eagles have been increasing dramatically over the past few decades. Our work was featured in the November 1992 issue of National Geographic magazine, so if you have a stack of those in your garage, you can go back and find this one, read all about it. So one of the questions that we've long had is, what do those eagles do for the first 4 years of their life before they settle down and begin nesting? And this was once a very difficult question to answer. Here's a photo of one of our old trucks back in the 80s with an old-fashioned VHF radio antenna, and you had to stay within about 3, 4, 5 miles of the bird in order to get the signal. And this is our former assistant director who went on a grand adventure trying to follow an eagle once it left Oklahoma in the spring. And he would drive like crazy trying to stay within 5 miles of that eagle as it flew. And if he'd get to the end of the day and he had lost it, he would find the nearest airport and try to find a local pilot who could take him up in a plane and do circles until he found where that eagle was roosting for the night. The next morning he'd go back out and start following that eagle again. It's just remarkable to think about even being able to do that, but he managed to follow it all the way up to the Canadian border back in 1987 using this now primitive, but then state-of-the-art eagle tracking technology. Got a little too close to this one, maybe. But today we have a lot better tools for doing this. These are some examples of some backpack satellite transmitters that we can use now on eagles. Eagles are large enough to carry carry a transmitter of this size, and it has some solar charging capability, so it can last for many years instead of only a few months. And it uploads locations, GPS locations to a satellite at whatever interval you specify, and then you can download that data. So the whole process of tracking eagles has become a lot easier nowadays. So here's an example of actually putting those transmitters on an eagle. First you have to find an eagle nest that has young in it, and you have to climb up the tree to get there, and remove the eagles from the nest and take them back down to the ground. Put on these backpack transmitters, and these birds also have falconry hoods on them just to keep them calm during this process. And then the eagles are put back in the nest, and a few weeks later when they actually leave the nest, we'll be able to start tracking their locations. So here's an example of a young eagle during the first day or two after it has left its nest. The point 0 there toward the upper right is the location of the nest near Sand Springs along the Arkansas River. And each of those points is someplace where the eagle spent a little bit of time during those first few days. And you can see it's just learning how to make some short flights, learning how to live along the river, how to start hunting. We expected our eagles to go north after they left the nest, and that was not what the first 2 eagles did. They went south, and they ended up spending the rest of the summer around Houston, which we really did not understand, but that's what they did. Subsequently, all of the remaining eagles that we put transmitters on in future years did more what we expected them to do, and here are a couple examples. They would go north up to, say, the Dakotas or Minnesota or southern Canada to spend the rest of the summer, and then in early fall they would begin migrating south again back to Oklahoma and spend the winter. And each individual bird would have a very similar pattern from one year to the next, and they would do this for about 4 years before they would actually settle down and establish their own nesting territory here in Oklahoma. Here's an example of a bird that was hatched near Stillwater and ended up moving all the way out to basically the eastern end of the Panhandle, about 158 miles away, and that's where it set up its nesting territory. So here's an example of I don't know if there's any such thing as a typical bald eagle nest in Oklahoma, but this is pretty typical, a large nest in a large tree. And we have a form on our website where people can report eagle nest locations to us, and we try to monitor every eagle nest in Oklahoma every year just to determine how many are successful and how many young are produced, and keep track of the number of nests in the state as that number continues to grow. And to do that, we have what we call our BEST, our Bald Eagle Survey Team, and these are volunteers that sign up to help us monitor these nests. So we have an annual workshop each fall to train new volunteers and get them involved with helping us keep track, because as the number of eagle nests have grown in the state, it's become more difficult for us to keep track of all of them. Another thing that we've done for about 20 years now is put up web cameras on eagle nests, and here's just a couple shots of that process. Sometimes you have to climb the tree to get up there and install the camera. Other times you can use equipment to get up there. Here's an example of a camera watching an incubating eagle. Here's a little picture of the nest building process. And it's funny to watch them sometimes because mom and dad don't always agree on the placement of the furniture in the nest. So there's a lot of rearranging that goes on. Eagle nests provide homes for other critters as well. This great horned owl began nesting in an eagle nest one year in January and suffered through a pretty substantial snowstorm, as you can see here, as it tries to incubate its eggs. chicks in this nest, and you can see that 2 of them are dark brown, and 1 of them is still covered in the light gray down feathers. And that's because eagles begin incubating with the first egg, and so eggs are laid at about maybe 3-day intervals. So that 3rd chick hatches about 9 or 10 days later than the first chick, and that's one of the reasons why nests with 3 chicks often only end up successfully raising 2 chicks because of that age difference. But we have had some 3-egg broods that have survived. Here's a little example of a raccoon that had moved into this eagle nest. And when the nesting season came around, the eagle wasn't so sure it wanted those raccoons to stick around, so I don't think they did. So these web cameras have been really popular in classrooms, not only in Oklahoma, but we get emails from teachers all over the country who have used these web cameras in their classrooms to teach not only biology, but useful in other subject areas as well. Here's just an example of a teacher using the classroom video in her classroom. We spend a lot of time trying to get the word out about birds and bird conservation. We've been featured in Audubon magazine and National Geographic, as I mentioned. A lot of articles on various projects that we've conducted around the ecology of grassland birds. And one popular project that we have for schools here in Oklahoma is a art contest for high school seniors, open to any high school senior in Oklahoma. And we call it the Sutton Award. We are named after Dr. George Mitch Sutton, who was an artist and an ornithologist and a professor at OU for many years. And he's kind of referred to as the grandfather of Oklahoma ornithology. And so when our organization was established about 2 years after he passed away, we named the organization after him, and we try to carry on his legacy of blending both art and science. So this contest that we have involves a high school student picking a wildlife conservation issue, a current wildlife conservation issue, and creating a unique individual artwork piece about that. It could be a sculpture or a painting or a photograph, and then they accompany it with a short essay describing the wildlife conservation issue. And we have a panel of judges that pick winners each year, and we provide about $20,000 in scholarship funding to the winners. The winners get to have their artwork displayed at the annual NatureWorks Wildlife Art Show and Sale in Tulsa, which is a really impressive art show of professional wildlife artists from around the country and sometimes around the world. So these students really get a chance to interact with professional wildlife artists, and it's been a great experience for them. So that's one of the things we do. We have a very active education program. I have Caitlin Garcia here with me today with our education program. She's one of our bird handlers, and we have a number of birds, ambassador birds as we call them, that can visit Oklahoma classrooms and teach the students a little bit about birds and their conservation. The future of wildlife is literally in our hands, and so we appreciate the support of everyone who has supported the Sutton Center in the past and in the future. With that, I'll open this up to any questions you might have about bald eagles or the Sutton Center. Yes, but if one bird passes away, the remaining one will find a new mate. But yeah, they do typically stay together for a long period of time.
How many nesting pairs do we have? I know I'm counting, so I don't think I brought it. But how many?
I can't answer that off the top of my head, but you've got a bunch of them around here, I know. And one of them blew down last last spring in a storm, I understand. So that's something that happens pretty frequently with eagles. You know, Oklahoma's weather is pretty rowdy sometimes, and we have a lot of nests that come down in storms every year.
I follow Jackie and Shadow also, Susan. And they're now, you should follow. So she's sick. So whoever is trying to help her, then they'll take her back to the founder. Two questions. They'll find him. And already considered something doesn't he would eventually find another mate.
Yeah, that's they'll stick together if they can, but if one of them gets hit by a car or gets lead poisoning or any one of the many things that can happen to an eagle, they'll find a new mate.
You said that quite often when there are 3 eggs, that one of them doesn't. Do you now go in and when there are 3 eggs, take out one of them to keep that?
No. I mean that's just a natural process. Our whole philosophy around putting up these eagle cameras is to educate the public about what it's really like to be an eagle, and it's sometimes it's pretty challenging, and there's some challenging things to watch on the camera sometimes, but we try to show people what's really happening out there, and there's some amazing things that do happen. We had our pair this year found a great blue heron nest somewhere in their territory, and they would start bringing back young great blue herons that they would raid from the nest to feed their chicks, and they brought one back but didn't kill it. So there's this live great blue heron chick in the nest, and it's staring down these young eagles who don't know what to do with it, and they retreat to the far edge of the nest, and they stayed there all day until one of the adult eagles came back and finally dispatched the heron. And once they did that, they started eating it right away. Then they know what to do.
So we have eagles over on Honey Creek, and once in a while we see giant, looks like golden eagles. Do golden eagles and bald eagles get along?
Well, no, I wouldn't say they get along, but we do get some golden eagles over here during the winter months, but as far as the nesting season, they're pretty much only found like out in the panhandle. During the winter, especially like along the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve, but even this far east, you'll occasionally get golden eagles during the winter, but you know, they hunt different prey, and so they don't really overlap very much most of the time.
A question from your last talk, I heard you speak before. I seem to remember something you said that you guys had a hard time when you brought the eggs back from Florida to Oklahoma, something about maybe the birds that were hatched weren't acclimated to the weather in the Midwest. Did I just make that up?
Well, what I might have said was, you know, when a lot of people hear about there being so few eagles in the lower 48 states, and yet there's a lot of eagles in Alaska, they'll say, well, why can't you just take eagles from Alaska and move them to Oklahoma? Well, one of the reasons is that the southern race of bald eagles that we have here have a sort of a natural immunity to some tropical diseases, things like avian malaria. And so if you take eagles from Alaska and brought them to Oklahoma or Florida, number one, they probably wouldn't stick around anyway, but if they did, they would very likely succumb to either the weather conditions or some of these tropical diseases that they don't have immunity to. So you really have to start with the the breeding stock, so to speak, that's native to your area and that can survive here.
My question is about disbursement of the eagles across North America. Is it pretty even, or I assume there's some pockets is Oklahoma a main area with a large population?
No, not really. I would say that the Mississippi River is probably a pretty large area for eagles up and down. Oklahoma, we get a lot of eagles here in the winter months because of our reservoirs now. That would not have been the case, 200 years ago, but many of those eagles that spend most of the year up north can't hunt up there during the winter months because the water freezes over, and so they come down to places like Oklahoma with our open reservoirs where they can continue fishing and hunting ducks and so forth.
From the east and west coast?
Yeah, there are eagles pretty much nationwide, but the eastern 2/3 of the U.S. and then maybe the Pacific Northwest are sort of the primary areas. There are a lot fewer in the desert Southwest and other places, as you'd imagine, for a bird that really focuses on fish and ducks for its food.
You may have answered one of my questions, but I lived in Alaska for a while, and my project was on Kodiak Island, and so at the dump at Kodiak Island, there was just eagles in every treetop. And in Alaska, they're probably Alaska buzzards there. But as a waterfowl enthusiast, we got to see ducks. The eagles were always close by. If you have a wood duck, you better go get it. What is the eagle's primary diet? And then two, what's their most
Yeah, so eagles are very adaptable to whatever prey is most abundant around them. So it's actually interesting to watch. Even just here in Oklahoma, we've had our nest cameras on nests, at Sequoia Wildlife Refuge and over by Stillwater and currently in Bartlesville and also in Tulsa. And every individual nest will have a different most common prey item. So over by Stillwater, by the Sooner Lake there's a lot of American coots that are there in the winter. And so you'll see just a lot of coots being brought back to that nest. Whereas along the Arkansas River in Tulsa, we would see an inordinate number of turtles being brought back to the nest as prey items. And at the Sequoia Refuge, we would see things like gulls and geese be brought back to the nest as prey items. So they're pretty adaptable to whatever is around, and they're also not above scavenging. So getting hit by cars is certainly a source of mortality. Probably the biggest threat to eagles currently is lead poisoning, either from lead bullet fragments left in gut piles for deer hunting. They'll consume that, or fishing tackle inside of fish, things like that. So any place that does rehabilitation of eagles in the U.S. will have many stories they can tell you about lead poisoning being a problem in eagles these days. So that's probably the biggest current threat. And sometimes the lead poisoning maybe won't be quite enough to kill them, but it will inhibit their ability to move and their cognitive function, and so it'll be much easier for them to get hit by a car in a situation like that than it would be otherwise.
That's interesting. Lead shot and steel shot. One of the big that never makes sense.
Eagles have no way to get rid of lead once they ingest it, so it's a cumulative problem. Every little bit they get adds to their load. So over a lifetime, even a few small exposures. I mean, it only takes like 2 number 6 lead pellets out of a shotgun shell is enough lead to kill an eagle. So it doesn't take very much either.
You're below them. They perceive you as a threat. So we always try to stay above them. Is that a myth, or is that?
Well, I think there's probably some truth to that. I mean, any sensible bird is going to be afraid of another bird above it. because they're in a vulnerable position, being below a potential predator. I don't know specifically how eagles relate to airplanes or how they perceive them, but there could be some truth behind that.
When you're dealing with young people putting on a transmitter or whatever, do you ever get attacked by the parents? Protected?
No, and that's another interesting difference between the northern bald eagles and the southern bald eagles. Our founding executive director, who passed away a few years ago, did his master's degree studying nesting eagles in Alaska, and that was very precarious going to those cliffside nests because those eagles would become very aggressive. I mean, he had to wear helmets and all kinds of protective equipment, but the southern eagles just are not that aggressive around the nest, so they do not typically, cause any problem. They'll fly around and scream a little bit maybe, but no, they typically don't attack the way that the northern eagles often do.
Question, how is the Sutton Center funded, and how many people do you have work within the organization?
Well, we have about 15 full-time people, and then we hire some additional interns and seasonal technicians during the summer to help with some of our projects. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so our funding really comes from donations, and it comes from grants from philanthropic organizations. And currently we have a contract with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do captive breeding of 2 endangered species that we're all working to recover. One is the Atwater prairie chicken in Texas, coastal grasslands of Texas, west of Houston. And then the other is the masked bobwhite, which is a subspecies of the northern bobwhite quail that we have here in Oklahoma, but looks quite different and is found in the Sonoran Desert of Sonora, Mexico, and southern Arizona. So we have captive breeding programs for each of those species that we are delivering chicks to those areas each summer for release to try to get the wild birds reestablished.
I probably could have Googled this, but what's the average lifespan of an eagle? And then do they always come back to the same nest? As long as it's there.
Well, I don't know what the average lifespan would be. I think the record for a wild eagle is something like 35 years. A few have lived longer than that in captivity, but that's a pretty good run for a wild eagle. And as I mentioned earlier, most of the mortality occurs during that first year. If they can survive their first winter and get through that, then they're probably, going to live for another 10 or 15 or 20 years. What was the other question? Oh, not always, no. And that's been a frustration for us trying to put these web cameras up on nests, because we'll go to all the trouble to install the camera on a nest, and then the pair might decide to use an alternate nest in their territory. And so we have to wait a year and move the camera again. So eagles will often have more than one nest within their territory, and they'll kind of decide each year which one they want to use. Typically, if they've had a successful year in their nest and actually raised some chicks, they will use it in the same nest again. But if they have a failure, or there's a storm and it damages the nest or whatever, then that might cause them to move the following year to a different location.
An amazing presentation, thank you. Do they not have any resistance to the monitoring device you put on them, or there other eagles around them don't mind that?
No, there doesn't seem to be any problem with like other eagles picking on them or anything, and these devices are pretty well designed not to impede their movement, and they're light enough that they don't impede their movement. So we haven't noticed any problem with the eagles carrying those. There's a rule of thumb in birds about what percent of a bird's body weight is okay to put on them as a transmitter or a device like that. And so we stay well within those limits. And as this equipment continues to miniaturize, there's actually trackers today that are available to put on birds much smaller than eagles. So it's really been a great way to learn a lot of things about birds that we'd have no other way to find do you go for that summer when you're not in Oklahoma anymore?
Did they get removed from the endangered species list, or are they still on?
No, they were delisted in 2007, I believe. So they still have legal protections, but they are no longer endangered.
So how do you attach the tracker to the eagle?
So it's kind of a backpack style harness that's made of a special Teflon ribbon. So the Teflon makes it very slippery, so it can move around a little bit without damaging the bird's feathers. And it's basically just like wearing a very small backpack.
Well, thank you so much. This was so interesting. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's always got my eye out for an eagle's nest. So thank you, thank you. I assume if somebody was interested in volunteering for your organization, they could just meet with you at Rotary today. You could give them some information. Perfect. All right, well, as we get to wrap up today, we are going to leave everything out. So we don't need to do anything with the chairs or tables. Clayton will be back next week, so I'm happy to welcome him. I will say, next week is a club week, but it's really important that you be here. We need to approve our budgets, and we cannot approve a budget if we do not have a quorum. So your attendance next week is very important. Judy mentioned this about the Fantasy Football League, and before we say, the four-way test, which is Rotarians, we really try to live our life by this. There's only one time that you get to suspend that, and that's when you're on Tom Riggs' Fantasy Football League. He